Hello, welcome to Star Wars Spelt Out. I'm your host, Josh Chapman, and today we say goodbye to a friend, to a dear friend, to many dear friends, but then some many dear friends are still with us in one way or the other. But we're wrapping up the final arc of Andor Season 2, and we've got to give it the goddamn respect that it deserves. So we've got a full deck here. We've got Matt Mole. Hello, Matt.
Captain on the deck.
We've got Turbo. Hello, Turbo.
I have friends everywhere.
And we can't have an Andor wrap-up. It wouldn't be right if we didn't have Catherine Kneen herself, who this morning pointed out that Diego was somewhere taking a photo doing the exact same pose that he was doing in the celebration ones as well. Hello, Catherine. How's it going?
It's a very odd feeling.
It's hard to say goodbye.
Goodbye,
I'd like to give a special mention to
Catherine, my friend.
I think 70% of the reason why this show was made was because of the buzz that she put through the internet the last 5 years.
There was a lot of credit for Kathy Kennedy this week. You know, Tony Gilroy came out giving Kathy Kennedy her due, well deserved, but not as much CK as KK. That was probably needed.
I would love to get some stats on the engagement around the "We Are One Day Closer" tweets and posts. I think that moved the.
But you had to switch platforms halfway through too. Like you abandoned, the X sphere and moved on to a new sphere as well.
Basically, I've kept Twitter going purely for that. So now I'll be at some point like locking it down and
you're doing the burn. Are you going to get the silver liquid out and just pour it all over your Twitter account and watch it catch fire?
I think that's the way doing it. So this last little bit being like bluesky, Twitter and Threads I've been posting on. It was traveling quite well on Threads, so which I don't use very much at all. So yeah, it was, but yeah, I'm kind of a bit lost now. Like honestly, last night it was sort of funny going to bed going, I don't have to post.
What do we do now?
Yeah, it was.
It's been 1 day since we've finished Andor.
Well, was that? I remember when I saw Revenge of the Sith and walking out of that at 2:30 a.m. in London by myself, kind of having that bittersweet, kind of assuming at the time that was the last Star Wars I'd ever go see and that was the end, and it was obviously sad story at the end and sort of feeling all of that and going that was the end. But we thought we've been at the end before, and I'm sure we'll get to all of that stuff at some stage, but it may not be. Who knows? It might not be the last one we read.
It's never the end.
We'll always do we are one day closer to the 10th anniversary of Rogue One. and then there's a rumor that there's going to be Andor at the cinema, so it could be one day closer to Andor at the cinema.
Yeah. Well, it sort of was pointed out this week that pretty much 10 years ago on the release of the finale of Andor, that was the day it came out that Diego was
signed
cast.
on to the project. Yeah.
So
maybe it's his fault that they did a 4-week thing.
Maybe they're cooking something right now and we just don't even know it.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going on behind
Junior.
it? Who knows? Junior. It's like the Phantom. I see it's like the Phantom.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. There's just another one that comes every time. And I think it's the same man. It's like, I saw Andor 50 years ago. It's like, no, he was the same one. So I was just thinking about the Phantom the other day because Billy Zane's coming to the Astor to do a screening of the Phantom.
Oh, that's right.
And I think I'm going to go down and check it out, being an old school Phantom fan that I am. I love a bit of Billy Zane. But we're not here to talk about Billy Zane. He's not in Andor, unfortunately. I mean, how do you make a good thing even better? Put Billy Zane in it, maybe. But the last arc, we'll try to stick to the arcs. We're going to do the recap of the whole series, and we'll do all of that kind of stuff, and that'll all happen. But I think we'll try to keep our focus on the arcs because otherwise we're just going to. It's going to be too big and unwieldy, and we'll be here all night. But episode.
I'm happy to talk all night.
Episode titles, Catherine. Can you fire them off quick, smart?
Oh, I did. I had them, and then I lost them.
Okay, it's
The
called
Luthen episode.
Make It Stop?
No, Make It Stop.
Never heard in relation to Andor before.
Who else knows? Who else knows? Because of the paranoia about who knows about the Death Star and the plans. And then the last one was, oh God, what was that? Jedha? No, what was it?
Yeah, Kyber, Jedha.
Jedha, Erso.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And a resident running time expert mole. We were going long this week.
I got to say, the episodes were quite short in comparison to the previous arc we had. I'd say their episodes are about 38, 39 minutes because there's a 2-minute intro and a 7-minute
long
thing.
intros.
Even Jimmy Hebert. Yeah, there's 2-minute recaps.
The recaps are getting longer and longer.
And I didn't watch them the first watch because it was just me. But then when we watched it with Kat last night, we did all the because she needs a little bit more sort of reminding.
It's a lot of filler when it's 46 minutes, but there's 9 of Polish subtitles and then the recap of the previous episode. But still,
we've been down this road enough to know what it means. What you shave off and what. But they're all roughly about 40 minutes an ep, weren't they? They're 40 to 45 an ep.
It was a brilliant. Yeah.
So it was. It was a satisfying wrap up. I don't think there's any question about that, but it did definitely feel like it's not the end. It's definitely a thing that leads into something else. And we kind of knew that. I guess we'll just start at the start. But I mean, Catherine, we should start with you. You got Book of Boba Fetted. Now I know how Hawes feels all the time, and he's just like, buddy, I sat through 2 Book of Boba Fett episodes, and he wasn't even in it. And no Andor in that first episode.
Look, there was 24 episodes of Andor, and I think that's the only one he hasn't appeared in, whereas Book of Boba Fett was, 6 episodes, and he didn't appear in 2.
Yeah, it's a pretty bad strike rate.
And what we got was unreal.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It was unreal.
And
we sort of
said Clay was, the secret MVP of previous arcs, but she was the MVP of the arc. She was the heart of this arc. I never really thought about what Luthen and Clay's relationship was. It never really. I was like, was she? I never really thought, was she an employee? Was she a relative? Was she younger girlfriend? Or I never really sort of thought about it until it was put there. Mole, did it sort of take you by surprise that?
Yeah, I didn't realize the close. I mean, they had a very interesting dynamic. Like she sort of became the stronger, more aggressive one towards the end, and he was sort of,
fraying at the edges a little bit,
getting overwhelmed by things, and when things were starting, his resilience was dropping, and she was putting him back on track. And you sort of got not a family vibe, but there was definitely more than an employee-employer sort of thing. And you could tell there was a closeness, but I don't know, there was so much going on and that you didn't even stop to think. And then...
so that was an Imperial uniform he was wearing in the flashbacks, though.
Yeah, I read an article today with her, and it was saying that he was... in an Imperial army, and that they were doing horrible things, and he had like an attack of conscience, and that's where he found her. And they'd been wiping out her village, but he protected her, and then she stayed the absolute determined, clear-minded, focused person, laser focused.
She was kind of like Turbo, like she's actually the driver behind this more than him. Like she's the one who's been more wronged by the Empire than him. Like she's kind of pushing him. She's got the steely determination of someone who's been lost everything.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you'd make the assumption that, there was a firing squad going on when she was stowed away in the ship. You assume that it's either her family or a village. But so she's got this sort of similar themes along PTSD and trauma, and she really has it against the Empire. So you're right. She it seems like she's got that driven, and it goes through. I think Luthen seemed a bit freaked out by the whole thing. He was sort of mumbling to himself. He was saying some word I couldn't think of when it was on the ship.
He was saying, "Make it stop, make it stop."
No, there was something else. There was some other language. I think it was like Rosh-Luta or something.
Oh,
Is it in the
subtitles? I haven't seen the
language.
subtitles yet. I don't.
Yeah. And I thought he was mumbling, because he was having a drink and, trying to do that. But, I think you're right. She was very driven. And he was trying to guide her through, keeping control and channel the anger. Yeah.
How about the special effects?
The de-aging was flawless. That was, if you look sort of Good Will Hunting, go back and watch Good Will Hunting, which is sort of mid-90s Skarsgård, which I guess is 20-something years, 23rd. That's pretty much who you're getting there. Maybe add a couple of years on there, but that.
See, it was good, but I don't think they had to do too much because they just changed his hairstyle. And maybe
it was funny though because the last shot of him,
it was clean.
But the very very last shot of him in that episode where he's in the hospital and she comes and she turns the machine off. He looked younger there. I guess because they took the wig off him, he just didn't look as old in the face. I don't know whether that was just a trick of the light or whatever it looked like. He just looked closer to the youngified version on the.
He did.
Somehow, probably because he's relaxed as in that
state.
It's going through he's never relaxed because he's always on guard, as it were, and holding his tension. But you're right. You sort of had to look like, yes, you could tell they'd changed his hair, but then you had to look and go, oh yeah, he does look a bit younger. But they had a very light brush, I thought, with it. They didn't go overboard. It was, it was a good.
Well, it was probably not a
good use of the tech.
Clay is probably only in her mid to late 20s, you'd assume. So, and if she's 12 or 10, then you're not shaving 40 years off. We're not, we're sort of shaving 10, 15 years off, which is a bit easier. But it was quite flawless, really. But I mean, we should just jump back to the start. I mean, Paul went out for Lonnie. He was the guy. He and Catherine, the timeline. Who knows what when? And it was kind of funny about. I haven't gone back and watched Rogue One yet, and I feel like we're jumping all over the place. But as far as I did watch that sort of scene where that takes place and Cassian meets up with what's his name? Tivik. And it's so crazy how well it lines up because he actually talks about the things that he and he says Erso and he's like Galen Erso, that information is already there. So it's sort of the nuggets that sort of go back and talking about. I feel like we're jumping to the very end, but I think it's relevant that they talk about what Cassian's motivations are and blah 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 blah. And we all had this whole thing of talking about, well, when we get to the end of this, he'll be a soldier. But what it really is that he's pushing Luthen's thing. He's doing it for Luthen. He's actually off the back of that happening, and that's where he is when that movie sort of kicks off. So it's quite amazing how well it fits, really. But it's all back to Lonnie, who's been snooping around Turbo. He has been digging around in Dedra's inbox,
stealing her passwords and codes and things like that. So, and he actually he's the one that pulls sends a signal to Claire to say this is like the final call. I'm out, and then meets up with Luthen.
He has to be out because once they find out that he's accessed the file, he was cooked and he knew it. He's like, well, I'll get the information, save me, but I mean, he's basically set off this chain reaction events that.
So did Claire smoke him from a distance? Is that implied?
No, Luthen killed him.
No, Luthen killed him just
sort of under the right. I mean, I know that one of them did it. I thought that maybe
because obviously. Lonnie and his wife and daughter, I think it is,
he does say that
Luthen was talking about taking him to Yavin, and I thought, okay, he's told him about Yavin. This is a bit weird. He's told him where they're going and a safe place.
They're a bit freelance about mentioning Yavin after.
I think he already decided what he was going to do. Then I think it was more just to keep him calm, probably, so he didn't run off.
There's last night. when I was talking about gathering my thoughts on Blue Sky, I added a GIF of Cassian killing Tivik because I sort of thought about those parallels with, Luthen killing Lonnie in that moment of Lonnie's too hot to try to get out. Like it's probably too difficult to extract him, that the Imperials will be looking for him, but it's too vital to get this information out. And that's probably why Luthen kills him.
Yeah, absolutely.
To improve their chances to get it out. But that parallels with Cassian killing Tivik. The information's too important.
And that's literally what the Empire burned through. I mean, that's partially why, mostly why Dedra gets locked up, and everybody, because they're stuffed up, but it's also like, the words Death Star. And anybody who knows it, at that point, dead. I mean, they don't know what's going to happen in 3 days' time or whatever it is. But
what's interesting, I think Lonnie mentions a weapon, but doesn't know that it's the Death Star or like a planet killer or anything like that. They just mentions a weapon, and the energy program is a lie, and the link between Jedha and
Gorman.
Gorman, and Scarif.
Because it's Cassian's mate who says it's a planet killer. So all of a sudden the scale gets bigger. And it's that corroboration. It's also the corroboration as well, because we'll get to it later on. But some of the rebellion are kind of like, we don't really buy this.
But the other thing Lonnie does is warn that Dedra Meero's coming for Luthen. So Luthen's given heads up there, so he's prepared. So he has
no back door in that gallery. Does anybody else find that weird? Because he hears the front door. You think he'd just keep the door locked and finish the job and go out the back door. But I'm amazed at a man as organised as him doesn't have a patch out the window or something.
It's sort of like in the middle of a building. So like, and then there's a skyport. No,
I thought there'd be a little back pole down.
I've studied Coruscant architecture. There's no back doors.
It is a bit surprising that they hadn't secured another sort of passageway. Maybe he just thought about Clea and he wanted to buy as much time.
I mean, when the doorbell rings and she's just at the doorbell, I'm just like, oh man, here we go. And it's just that little dance for a second. And when he just says to her, only 2 things in here are fake. Like he starts with that. He's just that little ding. I'm like, this is just a little glorious back and front of how long this dance is going to go for, really. But and it's interesting that we kind of, when she's getting interrogated later on, how she basically finds it. Like she's just digging around in all these files to get something where the lead on him was actually in old information that had been there for ages that they just didn't share. That he probably would have got busted a lot earlier.
So, throughout the series, but especially in like season 1, Dedra just continually pointed out that because of the Imperials sort of separating out information, not sharing these little things, this information wasn't getting connected. So, access wasn't really discovered until much, years into his operation. And yet that lead on his identity, wasn't discovered. So, she's competent. Except when it comes to her like cybersecurity.
I do all that training at work where they, Mole, I'm sure you've done it as well in financial, all the mandatory learning you have to do about, don't share your passwords, don't leave your laptop unlocked, don't do all those sort of things.
Even don't leave printed files on your desk.
Otherwise you'll get a Mendo finger to the head.
How was that?
But one of the things I like, the back and forth between Luthen and Meero is, I think he said to her, "There's a whole galaxy out there waiting to disgust you," because he's basically saying that the rebellion is growing, and she's kind of disgusted by it, and
it's really sort of slowly insignificant what she's got to. It's like, oh, you caught me, but the rebellion's not here. We've moved on. Like you've dicked around for so long that my part at it. And it was interesting because when we spoke about this, especially coming into this, when we were previewing it, we were talking about Luthen and kind of going, is he going to kick off the Gorman massacre? Is he going to do this horrible thing? Is he going to do this horrible thing? Is he going to do this horrible thing? Like he actually went out with quite a lot of nobility and protected the ones he cared about at the end and sacrificed himself for the cause and kind of got his dues. And there was a lot of that through message in those later episodes about the legacy and what he built. And even though he kind of gave people the shits, it was sort of undeniable what he had done in there. I don't know, Turbo, did you reckon he got his, like, did you sort of think that he was just going to be the guy to kick off the massacre? I mean, I know he sort of saw the benefit of it, but he wasn't the monster.
He just more planted the seed everywhere, and I think it was Claire as well. I think Claire was the one leading a lot of the intelligence and things like that, but he planted all these seeds across the galaxy and got the right people involved. He got Cassian involved, and I wouldn't say he actually did much. Well, when I say didn't do much, he wasn't actively fighting or actively doing it. He was just bringing the jigsaw pieces together and letting people fight, kind of thing.
He was sharing the information that they gathered. He was funding, because that's Mon Mothma.
True, he was funding, yeah.
Got the money.
Aldani money would have been enormous.
He was the one who gave it out, and he was trying to link up different rebel cells together to work. So this is something that I wish we had seen, but I hope that somehow we get it fleshed out a little bit in that, how did we get to Yavin? Because all the cells coming together, it needed something. And funding, and Luthen was sort of behind a lot of that. And he was well aware of Yavin. They were well aware of him. So I think that was the thing also, where they were a bit like, well, we're all here and you're not, and you're sitting it out. And I think that's where he rubbed the, Benjamin Bratt up the wrong way, and all those people, because he was sort of still keeping himself separate and running these sort of covert things that Cassian was still involved with right up to. And it was kind of funny because, again, we talking about, Cassian's motivations and stuff. He's kind of defiant up to the end. And if you go back in Rogue One, it actually does fit, because he does go off at the end with Jyn. He's just like, I'm going off. And that's actually, that's exactly what he's like all the way up to the point. He's still just breaking the rules, doing his own thing, but he's sort of indispensable. Yeah. He wasn't as much of a company man as I think we probably thought he was. And maybe we just got the wrong idea or remembered differently what his motivations were. Or maybe we've just been we've been reframed because of what we've seen, which was the whole idea of the show, I suppose. And I was sort of struck by, Draven seemed to hold Luthen in disdain, but it's like, but Draven, you're sort of ordering Cassian in Rogue One to assassinate Galen Erso, and he's very distrustful of people coming in, without being properly cleared, and he's well prepared to shoot ships out of the skies. While Draven is part of the more sort of military, the military clean part, he wears a uniform, part of the military establishment, as it were. Luthen's part of the shadowy, intelligence gathering. To do that. I think when looking back at Rogue One, we'll go, he actually leans on Cassian to do some sort of dirty work, get his hands dirty. Mole, and it's implied. Yeah.
You saw the sort of progression of the alliance on Yavin go from I'll come and go as you please, do what you want, just disorganized mess sort of thing, and then eventually it becomes a full-on strategic output and confined quarters.
Good job. If you want to be a welder, they're just welding all the time.
There's no unemployment on Yavin.
Nah, it's just like, if you can hold a welder, you got a gig.
I guess the more people you get, the less you can trust sort of lots of outsiders coming in. So there has to be some rules around how coming and going, and not letting the location.
It was funny that they never mentioned where it's such going. In A New Hope, there's such an emphasis on the rebel base. You know what I mean? They talk about it, we'll find the location of the rebel base and blah, 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 blah. It's not really mentioned. They don't even seem to acknowledge that it even exists before that. And this is only days before A New Hope. Is it really just off the back of Scarif that they're just we've got to find this rebel base because these pricks came out of nowhere with a whole armada that we didn't really suspect that they had? I suppose you could make that link on it, potentially.
We got no Dantooine.
No Dantooine. No Dantooine. They're on Dantooine.
Gutted.
So
gutted for my Dantooine anthology.
Luthen and Deidre do the dance, and then Luthen decides to take it in his own hands, literally, and gets the ancient knife and bit of Harry. Is it Harry Curry? Is that the he just does the in the thing and
I think I wrote this down. It was called a Nautilin bleeder, so it was a very blunt knife. So that's probably why
it's like using a soup spoon or something like that. It's just a bit. But
it looked like one of those knives from Game of Thrones that you kill the the zombie people with.
Oh yeah, it's got a little bit. Made out of dragon. Was it no?
Dragon skin
ice
or whatever.
Dragon. Yeah, I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah.
So and he gets taken to hospital, put on life support. Dedra wants to, get some information out of him, and then we get Claire being a one-woman secret agent, effectively.
One-woman band.
That cracked me up. That when what's his face, Hurst or whatever, he goes to the security thing, and they're talking about, it's probably a 3-man team, blah, blah, blah. and they're just watching Claire.
Yeah, she's just walking past the thing. I mean, we have
the disguise,
We have to acknowledge, and Claire infiltrates the hospital. She's got this cool little, I like the little lockers. They ended those lockers at Celebration, those big circular ones.
Little pods, yeah.
And she gets the nurse's uniform, and she kind of wears it. We've got to give a shout out to the granny and the little push thing. And I just love, because the show is so serious, but then every now and then it'll just throw a lovely little Star Warsy thing in, and the little granny who was being pushed around.
Did you notice in the subtitles the granny's there sitting in a chair, and the subtitle says "Granny scatting"?
Oh, she
was doing this like she was doing. That's the. I noticed that on the second time, the granny scatting. Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that in the elevator up, there's like elevator music playing, and I'm pretty sure that's the Naamos.
Oh, that's the elevator mix.
Music,
I heard that,
and it's an elever mix.
God, it's everywhere,
elevator
isn't
mix,
it?
Yeah,
it's the Mumbo number 5 of its day. Whatever, you just can't get away from it. So we get a couple more flashbacks. Is that Naboo, Mole? Is that confirmed?
I thought it was Naboo. It had the same architecture, very
hills,
similar landscaping. I am yet to confirm. Catherine's nodding her head. Have you confirmed this?
I'm pretty sure I've seen in somewhere that it's confirmed that that's Naboo.
It's like a Gungan in that
cafe.
It
would make sense.
Give me one Gungan in the background having a.
And we have cake spotting again.
I know. I thought when I watched that, I nearly texted you and just gone cake spotting, and I didn't know whether you'd watched it or not yet.
So they were having high tea. So they, these little 3-level high tea sort of stands, and they had little cakes.
Okay, it is Naboo. Yes, it is. Why are they bombing Naboo? Naboo is peaceful.
Well, the Empire had moved in.
It was probably occupied by the Imperials. I would say.
And it sends a message because that's the Emperor's home planet. So to attack the Empire on home planet sends an absolute message. Yep. I think like Luthen. Watch out.
Look out.
Naboo high tea and then press the button.
That's right. Blow that place up.
But don't look.
I
love that little scene.
No, it was fantastic.
It was a great scene where he's really testing her in a way to go, okay, you've talked about this, but are you actually ready to do this? Are you prepared to do this? And then he's going, okay, don't look, because he obviously doesn't want her to get caught. So,
but
telling
she's
her
ready to push that button. He's like, all right, you'll do it, but I'm going to actually just take this.
He actually says, do it. He says, do it.
And move. When I tell you to move, you move. That was quite good because that's what he says to her at the start. He's like, move. That was very... So,
good.
Eventually...
But one of the flashbacks before that, they were in a little village and we see a firing squad of just random villagers up against a wall.
What's the guy say? There was someone got hit by a sniper bolt and they've caught 4 people. Yeah. They keep catching people who did it or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So they, they're just using it as an excuse to round up people they want to pop off. Yeah. Amazing. And then she gets in, she blows up the transports out the front, she clears the room, she takes out a few stragglers, she gets in there and undoes the iron lung or whatever it is that's keeping him alive. And it was certainly not where I thought this first arc would jump off on at all. It was kind of hard to know really where it was going to go, but that was not how I don't think anybody predicted that Luthen was going to go down. Like we said, we sort of thought would Cassian kill him? Would he go too far? Would he blow himself up? Would he do all these things? And although I think it was a pretty fitting way to go, I don't know what everybody else thought.
No, I thought it was a very, sad but sacrificial death for Luthen. I mean, he knew it was coming. He had head on, and yeah, I mean, look, it was just, epically. It was so good to have a, pre-story on the dynamic between those two, and it just, an homage to the character that was just amazing for 20 episodes.
And she was just great. So I mean, it's funny now. We'll talk about where she ends up and stuff, but it's just like another classic character we've just uncovered that we didn't really. We know we sort of had in the last one. Was going, oh, you look at this cool, calm, collected assistant that he's got, and now we've got this sort of MVP character.
When you think about it, like in time-wise, I think those two, Luthen and Clea, were, let's call it the spark of the rebellion. So I think they were the first to sort of start something or gather momentum. I'm sure there's people that joined along the way, but it was the episode I didn't know we needed, basically. Yeah. And the other cool thing is the actress, I've forgotten her name, it was her first role. So she just graduated from...
Elizabeth Delulu.
She just graduated from Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. RADA, yeah.
Yeah.
She just graduated, and that was her first role. And you're like, my God, how is that possible?
What have I done?
And she's got to hold, her own against Stellan Skarsgård and
keep him in line
and like tell him off at times.
Yeah. Well, apparently, Tony Garos was saying the chemistry between Skarsgård and her in series 1 was so good that he added more of her as a character. So yeah,
he knows it when he sees it, Gilroy. So we know these arcs all take place one after the other. We just pick up where we left off, basically. But it's the second arc episode is really the repercussions of she's like, all right, I've gone and done this thing. I've covered my butt for a little while longer. Now I've got this crucial information. I've got to get it to the rebellion, but the walls are closing in. And before we get to her, she sort of holed up and tries to do the best she can to sort of hole up in the safe house and get comms out. We're going to go down to Brotown. We're going to get to the little frat house that Cassian's doing. The girlfriend's moved out. She's no longer on the scene, so he's just moved his bros in. He's just living with K2 and Melshi, and they're just having a booze up card game kind of. What's the game they're playing? Mole, is that a known?
Sabak.
Was that Sabak though? I thought Sabak was cards.
No, it wasn't Sabak.
It was like mahjong or something.
Sort of like tiles or dominoes tiles or something. Yeah, I don't think it was Sabak, but they were drinking. They were drinking Revnog again. So
everyone's getting crazy on the Revnog. Now it's got to be said. I mean, there was obviously a lot of drama in these 2 episodes, but I felt a tonal shift towards Rogue One, and maybe it was just because K2 was in it, and it felt...
It's the haircuts.
I mean, the haircut is spot on. He does, and he's obviously older, and even age will even get to Diego Luna. But
You're still beautiful.
It's pretty close, and the haircut, which is probably the worst haircut he's got in the whole show, to be honest. He's almost got the Luke Empire Strikes Back.
Same goes for Mon.
Oh yeah,
yeah. It's
the bowl.
They haven't really invested in the barbers. Down too many welders, not enough barbers on Yavin face.
There's not a good hairdresser on Yavin.
Yeah,
I think it might be all the moisture in the air. It just kind of doesn't do much for your hair.
Yeah, the conditioner's not amazing, but. He's got Melshi there. I mean, Catherine, did you like the idea that Melshi and Cassian were sort of bunk buddies, sharing a place, sharing a cell like the old days?
I do like that it looked like they'd grown a lot closer again. In Rogue One, I'd always known that the trust between Melshi and Cassian was always there, and it seemed like Cassian trusted Melshi absolutely, and Melshi was coming on board to this mission. Mm-hmm. But now, obviously with the history of Narkina, between them. But now knowing, okay, they even were roommates.
They do missions, and it's he's sort of like his buddy. And it's kind of funny because you go, wouldn't it have been great to see them meet up for the first time and realize that they're there and do this and do that. But these time jumps and the way they just tell you everything you need to know. You get in there and you're like, all right, they're there, they're mates, they've got K2, they're doing missions. Cassian's part of the rebellion, but he's still kind of flying by the seat of his own trousers a little bit. He's still doing things, although he does say he hadn't spoken to Luthen for a year, so it seems like he's been mostly towing the line, but still doing things his way.
Well, he'd been with the rebellion for 2 years, so he said 2 years ago I made the choice, and they were saying, you ditched us and deserted us.
But the last thing he did for Luthen was save Mon Mothma, though. It didn't seem like he'd done another job for him since then. But so then the secret radio goes off, and Will's decided to stay with the same lady. He hasn't moved on to another lady again in the next season, the next arc. He's managed to.
Will's Riz has run out.
he's settled down with the nice lady from Gore, and the secret Dina. The secret radio's gone off, and there's a mercy mission to get Claire and K2. It's like he's never left Turbo. It's just he was firing on all cylinders. Kat, I have to say, Kat was. I was watching with Kat last night. She every time K2 spoke, she laughed her head off. She loved. Yeah,
he's the MVP. He was so funny.
K2. She's got an Alan Tudyk thing I've got to keep an eye on. I think it's just.
And once again, K2's always stuck in the ship, and then he has to come and save the day. Yeah, it's like Tony Guru was mentioning this, like why he didn't introduce K2 earlier, because it's very hard to put him in scenes other than you stay behind and mind the ship, and then save
you
the
can
day
suck the peril out of the and it was we sort of knew in this when they got in a sticky situation that he was going to come through and kick butt, but I think you're right, it sort of comes through at the end as needed. About you, Catherine, your good buddy Alan Tudyk feels like he's never been gone.
It was pretty fab to see him just that interaction and seeing Cassian light, as it were, in those interactions, especially, playing cards, whatever, it was a real light side of Cassian. This is the friend side of Cassian that we don't get to see a lot of. And I think with the time jumps, we really don't get to see it. It was great having K2 around again to just, keep a list of how many times Cassian, violated
17
orders.
17, 18?
Yeah, 17.
17.
And then just coming and going, I've got to come in and save Cassian.
Yeah, I did like when the
Imperial.
The comms come down, or whatever, he just sits in the chair and he's just like, he just sort of does this. But it's that just feels like such an Alan Tudyk thing where it wouldn't have been in the. It's like, just find something to. What would K2 do? He just sort of like begrudgingly slump in his chair and things. But
there was a few times where it was definitely a great voice performance, but then there was a definite physical performance as well of him doing something to just interpret
the bit where they come back.
Definitely the wave.
When they save Claire, I know we're jumping around. When we save Claire and they because they come in hot on the U-wing, and the door opens and Cassian's kind of there, and then he just sort of leans down under the thing and he's kind of like, hi.
Hello.
Yeah. I thought that was very, very good.
We are kind of jumping ahead a bit. I think at the start of this episode was Deirdre and Krennic, the interrogation.
Yeah. And we were kind of wondering whether we were going to get Krennic back or not. And he came back in a bad way, Mole. He was not happy about being dragged down to the basement floor to deal with these minions.
His gristle. He was on fire. Oh, there he is. Ben Mendelsohn was.
The Aussie accent was slipping through again, though. Did everybody else hear it? There's a few.
All the interviews, and he was loving it, and he was just, he was definitely moving towards that, that just arrogant empire. You know, once you're at the top, you got to do everything to stay top. Like there was also that exchange with Partagaz and him, and they both know, like, you know, things are getting fucked up. And
well, he says he can't protect him anymore either. So does that imply that it was it just because of the? We can get to him in a minute, but it did seem like they had a relationship. They might have even come up together at some point as well. They definitely had a relationship.
Well, I think Partagaz held a secret for 10 years, basically. Only Yularen found out 1 month earlier, which is his boss.
Yeah, Partagaz hadn't known about, you know, the Death Star until very, very recently. Again, he was, whether he thought it was true or not, you know, he didn't know what the Death Star was. But yeah, he'd been working.
He was in the secret circle for the Gorman stuff, though. He was in he knew the shady stuff that was going on there as well. But
did you notice the Australian came out when he said, I think he said, "Is this why I'm here, for the murder of an ISB clerk?" It was like, everyone else says clerk, but he said clerk.
There was a few Australianisms that slip in, but I like that. I like that he suppresses his accent when he's, you know, when he occasionally can't help but, you know, keep the edge off it, so to speak. And the finger in the head was just. Finger. I hope that
so was Mendo.
Was that? Has there been any interview on that? Was that just he just did it?
Apparently, it was improvised. I think.
Yeah. In the declassified or somewhere.
Yeah, it might be declassified. Yeah.
Yeah. Denise Goff said he just did it on the day. He found it on the day.
It's such a thing where it's intimidating and belittling, and you know, it's just it's a little, it's petty, but it's also a physical thing where you're kind of hurting someone, but you're not really, but you're doing enough to really unsettle them. It's not like he's whacking her over the head or anything.
Pressuring them,
but it's still just sort of, it's just like, it just sums him up so perfectly, and it just sort of shows that no matter how many advances Deirdre makes, she's still just a cog in the machine that is absolutely dispensable as soon as they want her.
There was another thing that I picked up second time with the subtitles, and he says to Miro, "You and your fringy friend." Does he mean Cyril, like with his, you know, different kind of hair? I don't. It was kind of an odd thing to say.
No, he's talking about Jung.
Yeah.
Oh, because I thought of like Cyril's fringe, you know. Right. Hair, and I'm like, oh. But you're right, because he
about something.
No, because he was saying that
fringes.
Jung was always on the fringes.
On the fringe,
looking for things. But what about that? I just thought it was an odd interrogation where she grabbed her face and goes, "We'll just be fine without you." He was in a real, you know, beat down on women mood that morning.
So basically, she'd been poking around everybody's files looking for access and had compiled enough stuff to find out about the Death Star, and then Lonnie got in,
left her
screen on, walked away, left her screen on.
Lonnie was logged in for 3 hours last night, and that's what. That's where he found it all.
Just did a find weapon,
find Gorman.
Yeah, hopefully, you know, no compromising photos of Cyril on that hard drive or anything like that.
Yeah, because, you know, the Gorman thing had interested Lonnie and Luthen for a couple of years now. You know, when Lonnie told Luthen, you know, Deidre's on Gorman, and Luthen goes, "Why Gorman? Like what's the big deal? What's all that about?" And Lonnie's like, "Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know anything about that project." So it was something that they'd been interested in for a few years. So it's the Gorman thing that I think Lonnie would have followed the rabbit hole on.
Yep. Well, it's just interesting that just the existence of the Death Star, I don't know what it ever really got, you know, in Rogue One, you know, they have the contact, and the guy sort of goes, "Oh, it's a planet killer." You know, they kept it secret for so long, and it's really their own sort of infighting that kind of leak. I know that Lonnie's there, but it's also a result of, like you said, not sharing information, Deidre trying to get ahead, becoming obsessive on other things, and it's this sort of cascading thing that culminates in, that she basically gets sent to the brig for her snooping, really.
It's not just the snooping as well, because she basically Krennic berates her for confronting Luthen on her own.
Yeah, that
So
she can't
she
see
goes,
past
"Oh,
her,
yeah,
her own ego as well of wanting the glory.
Because she's so obsessed.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
obsessed
Also,
in a way that
it's not her jurisdiction. That's Heat's thing. Like,
well, that as well,
she's
yeah.
supposed to, she's
She's supposed to be
waited
out
till
of
his
there.
day off and then launched a raid with, an illegal raid. And not only that, just done it poorly. And the only thing that was going to save her ass was literally him surviving and being able to talk. And that's why.
So is it
she's
his day off that just kicks off Star Wars? Like if his day off had been a few days later, Luke, wouldn't have been there. They wouldn't have had the plans by then. Luke would still be on the farm.
I wonder if he chucked a sickie or something.
No, it was the wrong email that went to Jedha that started Star Wars.
So somebody just CC'd the wrong person.
But Deirdre's as obsessed with finding Luthen or Axis as Cyril was in finding Cassian.
Yeah.
They're both extremely obsessed, and they can't see the forest for the trees. They're not thinking logically or rationally. So they're just completely obsessed by it, overwhelmed.
Do you reckon they just sort of talked about it? Because obviously they knew that they were together. But it just seemed like one of them was focused. Like Cyril didn't really have any interest in Axis, and Deirdre had very little interest in Cassian, really, only that he was associated with Luthen.
Yeah.
They were just both
They just sat in the dark. They just sat with the lights out very often.
the lights out. Hopefully all that stuff didn't go on the hard drive as well. We don't need that getting passed around.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Melshi, K2, and Cassian, they go on the rescue mission to get Claire out of the apartment block, which is looking pretty grim. It was always looking pretty grim before. Looking particularly grim now. Didn't even have any furniture in it, or... Bix had done a little bit of work to make it nice for a bit.
You get to see the comparison of the flat above as well. Which is
it was actually
condition.
quite nice. And considering in Coruscant that most people don't get a view and get no sunlight, it was actually probably a pretty expensive piece of real estate, really.
Yeah, and there looked like there was a lot of water damage and stuff, so that whole floor kind of looked condemned as opposed to, the other floors that the Imperials were thinking that's where the transmitter was.
So they're sort of traced the signal back to that Clay was using to get in touch back to there, and the SWAT team comes in, and the little wiener guy has to go in. He's got his little jacket on as well, and it would have been very annoying if, in one instance, if that had been the end, we would have had to wait for a week with that episode cut off on the thing. And we watched it, and when it ended, Kat was like, "Oh, what?" And I go, "It's literally got another episode right now. It's okay. You don't have to wait a week to see it." But they get there in the nick of time. It's quite funny because they do kind of get there and they hang around Mole. Like they don't realize that their time is close of the essence as we probably thought it would be.
Yeah, because all those comms had been cut off, and so they hadn't heard from K2.
Yep. Yeah, and I suppose they just rock up. They've seen that someone's coming soon. They didn't realise that they were sort of right on their front door, I suppose. But I did like that they kind of walk out and Melshi just sort of walks out and there's all these dudes in the... and they just
surely you got to just walk past as well because they're not looking for him.
Yeah, but that's the flat that they're looking for, though.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, but they wouldn't recognise him, so they might just assume he's a innocent.
Oh, just delivering a pizza.
Yeah.
This is like I just got here. Yeah, and then we kind of get a bit of a shootout, and then K2 to the rescue, Mole. What do you think?
K2 just literally throws humans, or the K2 droid just seem to be people chuckers. Like
that's kind of their bag, isn't it?
I don't understand why you wouldn't have an empire with nothing but K2 droids. Like
I think it's a cost benefit. That's probably expensive.
Yeah, maybe they're expensive.
I did like how he said that he was in a parade. He goes, I saw Palpatine one time. I was in a parade,
I know that.
I've been to Coruscant before.
He's like, I've been to Coruscant once. Like, great. It's like,
Melchi's never been to Coruscant.
And Cass is just like, I'm sorry, I missed that. And just moves on.
What's kind of funny?
Were you just waiting for someone to go? It's a planet that's all city,
or
whatever.
The planet is one big city. And look, Chance of Valorum is waiting for us, or whatever it is. So, yeah, we do. We get this sort of big shootout. and we get the rescue, and they get Claire onto the U-wing. They get the hell out of Dodge, and they get her back to Yavin
Claire
base.
is injured though, so they did that stun blaster thing, which she
sort
gets smashed against a wall.
She got the brunt of it.
Is she injured from the fall? The stun must have been.
No, she got sort of slammed against a wall, I think.
Okay, cool. So because she's sort of not hamming it up, it seems to be mostly effective more than anyone. Anyway,
I should say that it's sort of the closest she gets to unraveling in the post part of that too. Like she's sort of been composed through the whole thing, but when she actually has to confront, killing Luthen and being, what am I going to do and all that kind of stuff like that she does manage to just keep it together, but she probably even unravels more when she gets to Yavin. She kind of feels like that. One, she's not welcome there, and
when she was waiting in the safe house, she was extremely paranoid and just hoping the message would go out.
Yeah,
but then when
disheveled.
Yeah, and then when Cassian finally arrived, she was telling Cassian about it. Cassian was sort of dismissing it in a way, and also the way it was sort of written, it kind of felt like Claire was going to die at that point. I could have sworn the way, I guess the vibe, but maybe it's deliberate, that she was going to pass on the message and get killed in that scene. So.
Yeah. And it was interesting in that she was there. She wanted to pass on the message to Cassian, but she was like, "No, I'll stay here," or "I'm not going to Yavin." And Cassian's like, "Of course you are. You've done all this service." He was just trying to convince her to come and be part of the family, but she was like, I'm not part of them.
Yeah, we just rank outsiders, consider us troublemakers.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because it's another, we talked about when this started of going, well, everyone's going to die, there's nobody left whoever's left in Rogue One, and then everybody in Rogue One dies and there's no one left and blah, blah. But at least as it stands now, she's still in play. Val's still in play. Val gets a look in here as well. And
Willman's still alive.
Willman's still alive as well. Some people make it. So we do sort of roll into the final episode. And it's a funny one, the final episode, because it's a final episode. It has things that happen. It doesn't have a big crescendo action thing kind of bit. It really is the lead in to Rogue One. So all the pieces sort of get into place. We kind of catch up with people's state of mind. We catch up with what the rebellion's doing. Saw Gerrera, I thought we'd get more with Saw, given all the lead up and the huff and the paint, and we just sort of get this.
It didn't need much. You just needed that one altercation with Mon, how he hung up on the phone and said, because in Rogue One she says that connection's been broken and needs to be mended, and we got that. Like, he literally got the. He literally hangs up on her and says,
"That was just like, dude, we know where you are, mate. We know where you are." He's like, "You don't know where I am." He's like, "Mate, we know where you are.
You're on Jedha, mate.
All these mysterious things are blowing up all of a sudden, and
But there's still a lot of animosity between Saw and Mon and Bale and those guys, and we don't really get to understand, other than that he's doing some stuff on Jedha, which he's trying to hijack transports and blowing things up probably on Jedha, and doing things differently than, say, the Rebel Alliance should do that. But
he does have information though. So his men on the inside, or Cassian's men on the inside, was rolling with Saw's crew, and he's got information about the Death Star separately to, how Cassian's got it. So it's never really explained how they come across that information as well, and who knows it.
Well, Bodhi Rook.
Does he? But he's already asked. Is Bodhi in play by then? He must be.
Yeah, this is. Well, there's whispers, but yeah, then they get.
I'm just trying to remember what his message is, because he does say to Cassian, Galen Erso, there's a weapon. Does he?
Yeah, they have Bodhi. They're walking him to. They have him at least under guard, and they are walking him to then meet up 2 tubes. Like, after that scene, we see Bodhi being walked to meet Two Tubes when they, then.
Yep. So he's come from that part of Saw's crew who've already got Bodhi, but hasn't been taken to Saw yet. So he's got the info from there because he's the man on the inside. So he's like, all right, this guy's talking about stuff. I'll get that message to Cassian, but I've got to meet up with the rest of that crew and hand Bodhi over to Saw.
Tivik got that information from Bodhi? Is that what you're saying?
I think so.
Yeah.
So he's got it. Galen's given it to Bodhi. Bodhi's tried to get in touch with the rebellion. He's found these guys part of Saw's crew. Because Tivik's with them. He's gone to give it the information to Cassian before they move Bodhi to Saw, which is why the time is of the essence, I assume.
Yeah. Because I rewatched Rogue One and I just thought Bodhi was keeping it secret until he saw Saw first. Because he was looking for Saw and he was saying, "Are you Saw Gerrera? Are you Saw Gerrera?" So
he's got the message from Gale and Erso, like the holographic message.
Oh, the holographic message, yeah.
So, but he's got to give something some intel.
He needs to.
But he was a pilot on Edu, so he sort of had a whiff of what was going on.
But he needed enough information for them to trust him or to get him over the thing. Yep. Okay. So that's all the lines. I can't believe this all lines up. Who would have thought that they did their research?
Well, the other thing is thinking about timelines is, we kind of make the assumption that everything's clearly 1 year apart, but obviously it's not. So this is one BBY, but it's effectively the year before, not exactly 365 days.
It's like December 24 or something. Or
it's literally it's probably 3 weeks.
But it obviously does load into. It does end with Cassian on that ship. Off to the Ring of Kafrene.
Is it the same jacket, Catherine?
It's the same everything. It's the same haircut. It's the same.
Is it 100%?
Yes.
They made
a little
the point
bit more purple than
they showed.
They made the point of showing his entire outfit to in the montage at the end. They made a point of showing his belt, his holster, his gun.
He does look skinnier though in Rogue One though, which is amazing to think given he's such a trim bloke. But I don't know whether he's slightly skinnier in the face, maybe just because he's younger. But I mean, it's pretty bloody close.
Yeah, they completely replicated the whole costume again. Apparently, Draven's they still had. So, he is honestly re-wearing his Rogue One costume uniform. I loved, though, that we saw some of the same, people, like even background actors that we saw in Rogue One.
Oh, the radio guy.
The radio guy who,
Senator,
that you go, is that like an older Noah Taylor?
Good call.
I've been thinking,
the council.
10 years ago in Rogue One, I was going, is that Noah Taylor? No, it's not. And every time I watch, I go, God, that looks like Noah Taylor.
I did like that Mon Mothma had a slightly nicer version of the outfit that she wears to imply that was just an off day where she had sort of the last thing in the wash in Rogue One. And she's kind of got, something that's kind of, it's not stylish, but it's a little bit nicer. I mean, she's got the same haircut and stuff, and she's just mucking in with everybody else. Like it's sort of, she's obviously staying there, and I was kind of weird because I totally forgot. I don't know why, but when I was like, of course Val and Mon are hanging out because they're just, they're just cousins and they're sort of
cousins,
yeah. They're just walking.
And we got the return of Admiral Raddus.
Yes.
Walking around.
Yeah.
Oh, because before he was just like a guy with a thing on there.
Yeah.
And Raddus mentions
I say we fight.
Raddus
Stephen Stanton.
Merrick's
Again,
away.
Did anybody check the credits? It was Stephen Stanton.
Oh, Steve Stanton, yeah.
Yeah.
But we didn't get Merrick. We didn't get to see Merrick, but Raddus mentions Merrick's away.
Yeah,
so which one's Merrick?
Good thing Merrick's not here, otherwise you'd shoot him out of the sky.
Dodana's
the one
obviously
with the best
old
moustache.
guy. Oh, Merrick's
He's
the
one
blue
with the
leader.
best moustache.
Yep.
Yeah, the pilot, yeah.
Yep. And then obviously, there you go. You're back, Mole. We lost Mole for a second. He's back. Your mic's muted though, mate. Which, isn't such a bad thing. You can keep it like that for the rest of the show if you like. No, he's still muted. Anyway, we'll enjoy this. We'll enjoy that peace and quiet from Mole as we continue on. So the last episode, it kind of just feels like Claire's dealing with the sort of aftershock of everything. But Cassian gets the message to Mon Mothma and Benjamin Bratt to bail, and the lady with the gold sort of thingy, and that stupid guy who hates everything. And
skeptics. Oh, God.
Yeah, they were like, here they didn't believe anything, and then, in Rogue One, they're like, no, we can't fight against the Death Star. It's like, dudes.
Just as frustrating as they've ever been.
The same actors. I love it. But
good continuity.
It's quite frustrating that they didn't listen to Cassian.
They really do have something against Luthen. Like, they just don't trust him. And
I did it was funny how much Jimmy Smits hated Luthen, and then even just Cassian and him just butted heads the whole time as well.
Well, they said they didn't like his paranoia or his non-collaborativeness. Like, I think, he did so much to set everything up, but then they sort of, once set up, they sort of built their own code, which he's like, well, I'm not. That's not my rebellion.
Yeah,
I'll keep doing
dealing
my
with Saw
way.
as well, who's just also going like, "Oh, you're also big when we all need to be together, but then we're also small when something goes wrong." And it's pick your lane, man. Yeah.
So Mon gets Val to try and talk to Cassian to get truth in the story and make sure that it's legit.
Did you like the toasting to the crew, Catherine? I thought you would have liked that little moment.
Yes.
She's like, let's pour one out for
Araman,
Gorn, Nemec,
Gorn.
Cinta.
Well, we've got to touch on Nemec. Nemec for the win.
Darnies.
We wondered when Nemec was going to cast his shadow over this season, and he went. His little podcast was everywhere. And how they did that, how they played that into how they played that into Claire, sort of, picking us up off the ground, and then literally just going back into the ISB and it being played on the thing where he's just before he knows his numbers up, just going, yeah, you're right. This is a folly. This whole thing.
I was going to say, it was confusing hearing that until he pressed the button to turn it off. And I read, he's heard the broadcast.
I watched it the first time in my headphones, and there's a subtle audio thing that changes. That it's gone from whatever the term is, thingy to
diegetic.
Yeah. But it's subtle. But like he's in the thing. But they just say it's been going everywhere. It's been sort of spreading like wildfire. People sort of spread it around. So I don't know whether Cassian put it up on Galactic Spotify or something, or what he did. Whatever he did, he should tell us, because we could really use some more listeners. Whatever his keywords are, he might get those annoying Instagram ads where it's just like, hey, do you get enough downloads on your Spotify track? You need to do and pay us money. Maybe he did a bit of that.
Just put the entire manifesto in the podcast notes and see what happens.
That's a good idea.
There's been some amazing monologues throughout the series, but can we just acknowledge Nemec's manifesto, the words in that manifesto, because it's amazing, and the way that the actor, that Nemec delivered them, it makes me tear up. It just really touches me every time. And like Cassian getting the word out somehow, it all spread, It was just word of mouth, or one person sending to 5 friends who sent to 5 friends.
Like those email, the early viral emails of forward it to 5 friends. But it's funny because I felt like in a 5-season thing, it would have been an episode of like Cassian finding a way to broadcast that. And that was the thing where we got to the episode and I'd completely not forgotten about it, but it wasn't something that I was going, oh, well, what's happening? Well, how come this hasn't happened yet? It completely took me off guard that it came in, but it came in at the perfect moment, right before the victories.
Well, Partagas was playing it, and the last thing in the manifesto he said before he turned it off was, oppression is the mask of fear. And you could see the look on Partagas' eyes where he was like freaking out about like all the stuff that Partagas has done, and he had a lot of guilt there, and that's what leads him to basically kill himself.
Yeah,
it wasn't guilt.
Well, he knew it was coming.
Well, it was fear. It was fear.
It was either be humiliated, and
it was fear of humiliation,
Narkina 5 or something.
Narkina 5,
because the other guy. Yeah.
But it
Oppression
also
is the
says
mask of fear.
that it's an unnatural order and you have to work so hard to keep it going. He's just like, oh yeah, they're just going to keep eating themselves. I'm just the next person to get eaten up in this to keep this charade going, basically, where the next person will step on top of the next person to keep this thing going. So they're not next, basically. And yeah, he sort of decides that his number's up, and that's it. It's quite an interesting turn of that character. He really was sort of just walking the line, but it all got a bit too much for him.
But Anton Lesser, like, he just absolutely
nailed it
throughout both seasons. Just killer deliveries all the time. But yeah, like how the other guy, I can never remember his name, that ISB
guy. The other guy. Yeah, I know the one.
Paul.
Yeah.
Legret.
Legret, yeah, that's it. Who, like he tells him the news that, they're
coming for
they're
you.
They're coming to question you, and Partagas says, just give me a moment. And Legret walks out, and there's the sound, and the troopers would go, and he's like, "Nah, just give it a moment."
And he was like, "That sounds like promotion."
Yeah, he's like, "It's not him shooting his way out. That's him shooting his way out, so to speak."
Yeah.
That's sort of
on Yavin. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was
amazing.
We start the sort of the long. So it's sort of
the musical interlude. How good?
Oh, there is something before that. There is something before that where Val's talking to Cassian.
Yes. Don't wait too long.
Yeah, don't wait too long.
So how does that frame?
Val's sort of saying,
how does that frame? Catherine, you can probably speak more of this than anybody else. The Jin Cassian, does it completely turn it on its head now? Is it looked through a different lens?
They didn't kiss.
I know, but it obviously it was talking about, like, you watch the movie, you'll think about it in a different way when you see it. And I think I'll have to go back and watch the movie and look it through the lens of that. There's obviously a connection, and there's a mission, and there's all that sort of things, and there's despair at what's lost at the last moments and all that kind of stuff like that as well. But we did talk about, like, when Bix left at the end of the last thing, kind of going, well, it would be weird if he'd moved on to somebody else if she'd been there at the very
4 days later.
Yeah.
Well, I watched Rogue One today, and I got very emotional when the Scarif was blown up, and you see him hugging Jin, and then there's that bit at the end where he sort of opens his eyes. I like to think he's thinking of Bix there.
So what do you think Vel knows? Do you think Vel knows where she is?
No.
She just goes back to that. She goes back to that planet where it got raided before. Do they kind of like, well, we picked that one off. We won't be back. There's friendlies
Nina
there.
Rao.
Yeah.
But I think Cassian says she's safe, isn't she? And then Val says, that's what I hear. So she's heard something, unless she's just saying it for comfort factor.
Yeah.
Val says she's heard that she's safe. And then Cassian sort of resigned himself to her decision, to sort of saying, sort of implying that she wouldn't be safe if he was around. He's realised that.
Yeah.
So he's resigned himself to that.
Yeah. It was interesting that, Mon sent Val to get confirmation of, what Cassian said, even though, Mon Mothma is more inclined to believe that, Luthen, he wouldn't make this up. He wouldn't die for this. But Bale is just pushing back so hard and hating on Luthen so much.
It was weird because they did have Clea there the whole time. Was it just that they didn't consider her as reliable?
Well, it just seems too far-fetched.
Well, that's the thing. It's funny because you look at it
to make this thing.
Yeah, because you look at it and the thing going, oh, we've seen the movie, we know there's a Death Star. But if it's just another day at work, and then all of a sudden someone's telling you that they're building this giant weapon
there's a giant Death Star weapon just come out of nowhere.
And they're kind of going from the bloke who's been notoriously self-serving the whole time, or the perception of self-serving, I suppose.
Yeah. And also that was he just being fed, a false lead, as it were, like false information? Because by their own admissions, he was burnt. They had figured out who he was.
Yep.
So was it false information?
To lure him out, kind of thing.
It was again interesting that yes, Vel went to talk to Cassian, but she was upfront about.
Yeah, straight away she just like. I think you're full of shit.
Yeah. But they talked about, and because they knew Luthen so well, they could talk, pretty openly about, who he was. But again, in that he wouldn't give it all up for nothing. Like this was something.
But he doesn't Cassian doesn't know. When we also learn, because they're going like, our plant at he's there. He only wants to talk to you. You got to go, do this mission. He doesn't know at that stage it's got anything to do with that information that he's just passed along as well. So the funny thing is, if you watch the scene, because when he brings up Galen Erso, he's like, Galen Erso, like this all connects. Like this is the thing that connects it. I just think I'm getting, I've probably gone a million missions where I'm getting information from this guy, and all of a sudden there's a desperation to it.
I have to rewatch, that episode, but Tivik is pretty frantically trying to contact them. They know he's with Saw, and that Saw's on Jedha with all the Kyber crystals, so they might. I think they were thinking that there was a possibility of getting some kind of confirmation through there, because that's why Drevin sort of relented and went, "Yeah, Cassian, go talk to him."
Yeah.
Because Tivik rang like 4 times. I'm only going to speak to Cassian. And there was enough breadcrumbs that, like, okay, well, we got to do this, and he's out of house arrest because the story needs to go on.
We need some kind of confirmation or that there's something there that this might confirm or refute what Luthen was saying. And I have enough trust. There's enough trust in Cassian and in what he was saying to go and test this and to see whether what Luthen died for, that information, whether it was true or not. Because I think they've then come around. Yeah.
Well, I think Cassian passionately said, look, mate, say what you will about Luthen, but he died for this information, so let's not just dismiss it so quickly. And I guess that's what
he knows it's
pushes
his purpose. The story. Like he's striding to that. Like it's obviously he's just walking across the thing, but with the music and the way he's striding over towards the ship and everything, and then he sees the Force healer as well, and it's kind of like she's like
gives her the nod.
It's like, okay, I get it.
I'm important.
There's a reason.
This is my show.
This is the thing. Like, this is the reason I'm here. This is the reason Bix isn't here. This is the reason that I got to go through with this. And this could be the biggest few days of my life, which it turns out that it is. And
then the music slowly merges into Rogue One music as well.
Yeah,
a little bit more symphonic, I would say, during that montage.
And
the other thing I was going to ask was. This is back a bit with Clea, like sort of she's getting lost in the rain and Val's there. First I thought Clea was, she's concussed obviously, so she's wandering around wondering what she's doing, but she's also a bit lost. She's sort of wondering what she's going to do after this.
Purpose?
So she doesn't. What's the purpose?
I don't fit in here. I don't have a purpose. People don't like me for something. She doesn't get a lot of respect or.
But I get the feeling that her and
the bank.
Her and Val are going to be friends going forward, I would say, because obviously she's
the dynamic before was she was like, "You're a spoiled little brat."
He's just playing in this. You're not living it.
Needy woman. Stop calling your girlfriend. It's making things difficult. And then there's that dialogue. It's like, I always wondered where you came from. So the dynamics definitely changed. It was nice. Val was compassionate. You could see she's lost everything.
I'll just insert them into the stories. Like I want to just. Put them in Hoth, put them in places, put them on missions.
There's
I did joke that
the thing is,
Clay would never fall for that Death Star 2, fake Botham spies and anything like that. Like she'd be way too smart for that. But
you wonder if they're ever going to do the Botham spy thing. I don't know.
Manny Bothans,
Manny Bothans,
Manny from Happy Mondays.
Yeah.
So
yeah, everyone loves a montage. Everyone loves a montage.
Yeah, and it was good. And then obviously, we end up back on. We end up with B2. B2's not alone. Catherine checking in on B2.
He's got a little friend.
Got a little
and they're
buddy
playing chasey.
Yep. So that's all nice, and so they're back on the thing, and then we find out that Bix is at the end, and she's had a bun in the oven, and we kind of get that. He's not really dead. He lives on through someone else. So it did kind of feel, I don't know, I kind of felt like they would probably do that. I know it's a little bit of a trope. It's been done. I didn't mind it.
It makes Cassian's sacrifice even more sad. That he never met his kid.
Yeah, I don't know whether you do the timelines, you go, how long did she know? Did she know? Is that why she did it? I think if she did know, it probably makes it a little bit more.
She did know she was pregnant.
It was confirmed in an article that Tony Gilroy did that, yes, she knew she was pregnant when she left. I thought that she was looking at like a sunset or the sun going through the clouds, mirroring the sun on Scarif. I found that very moving.
Cat bawled her eyes out when she watched it. She was just. I saw it because I'd already seen it. I'm just going, Cat's not going to be able to handle this. I know exactly the kind of stuff that sets her off. So
I heard Pip today talking to her work friends during work hours about Andor. So
I had two people at work.
I'm
only in the office one day a week at the moment, and two people separately were just like, "Did you see it? Like, did you watch it?" I'm glad that Bix made it out, and that she's got something. I suppose she already kind of had achieved everything. I thought she fought her personal demons and stuff. She can go forward. Again, bring her into the adventure. I'd like, bring her into other stuff. It'd be great to know whether she has a quiet life now, or whether she gets back into the fight, or where she ends up, and where these characters come from. But I don't know. Did you watch Rogue One through a different lens? The Rogue One watches here. Did it feel?
I did. It felt more special. I felt, emotionally attached to certain things, and it just hits home, and it makes A New Hope even better as well. But it makes this whole 4 story arc just fantastic now. Like I was messaging that the Death Star arc, Rogue One, Andor season 1 to Rogue One, and then A New Hope. It just makes this new section of the Star Wars canon even more special. It's just
sort of all about all the other guys, isn't it, Catherine? Like we've got our Hans and Leias and Lukes and the amazing things they do, but I think this for you. I think you brought a lot of just like it's the people that make this thing. It's the everyday people who don't get the kudos.
There's so many people who had to do so much, to sacrifice things, but who had to be there in order. They had to be in place so that Luke could take the shot. Like you think about all the ordinary people, yes, all those welders, repairing the ships, keeping the ships running. The cooks on Yavin 5, all, but again, then those technicians in the Imperial Senate who fixed that door lock, the bellhop who, he helped Cassian stayed undercover and gave Cassian another little piece to keep him going. Rebellions are built on hope.
It's funny because we made fun of we went through the prequel. We all lived through the prequel trilogy, and it was kind of like this thing of working backwards and these big strokes. It's a huge story, and you're working backwards, and so you're talking about Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi and Queen Amidala and all these huge strokes and huge things that happen, and you kind of work your way backwards, and it becomes like, well, you got to lay this out, you got to lay this out, you got to lay this out. I mean, this is a prequel story, but it just, for whatever reason, it's the small machinations that make it, not the sweeping things.
Yeah. You're right, because of the number of characters that had I guess you'd call it small acts of rebellion. All those little small acts add up to the ultimate, bigger rebellion.
Yeah.
Whereas, and it wasn't, even though they mentioned things like destiny and Cassian being the messenger, I don't necessarily think the Force was at play here. It was literally just, day-to-day small acts of rebellion, kicking against the pricks, basically, and saves the day. And then
all the things that made Cassian the man who could go, no, I believe you, Jyn. We're going to go to Scarif.
Yeah. And that's who he is. And we lead all that through because he's the same guy too. Like we said before, like he isn't actually the company man, and you're not quite sure. Like if you watch Rogue One at the start, it's like, oh, this is Cassian Andor from Intelligence. Like he's our best guy. You imply that he's just the best guy, and he takes a leap of faith, but it's actually who he is. Like she's actually appealing to the man he actually is because he does have all those examples of people sort of kicking against the norm, like you said, kicking against the pricks. Turbo, which is why he gets on that mission and doesn't shoot Galen and listens to Jyn and brings his crew and he's got his boys, he's got Melshi and his boys who all jump on that plane. I got to rewatch Rogue One again. Well, Kat was like, "We've got to watch Rogue One." Now. I'm like, "Yeah, you've seen it." She's like, "I saw it with you." I'm like, "Yeah, but that was in 2016 or something." Like, that was a long time.
I think
ago.
I saw a tweet today. I don't even remember exactly who said it, but it was basically Cassian busted his guts for 5 years, and then the nepo baby Luke gets all the glory from shooting down the Death Star.
I would have taken the denouement of like. You see the figures of Han, Chewie, and Luke walking down the ceremony. You just see their outlines in the thing, and there's Val and Wilmot, and they're all standing there and celebrating or whatever. But it's that weird thing. But I don't know. Would it feel weird? Does that feel weird? Like that, looking at that medal ceremony and looking at all those people, knowing that it's like, well, you all can't need a medal now. They did well on that mission.
You can't. You only get a medal for blowing the Death Star.
All right, maybe when we do we'll do the season recap. So we'll
stop trying to get Vel into the ceremony.
She deserves it. We'll come back and we'll wrap up the whole series too and the show as a whole. I don't think we can do that now, but as far as this arc goes, it was very satisfying. We got more of people we didn't even know we needed. It landed the thing. It put everything in its place. Put everybody where they needed to be, and some people made it that we didn't think were going to make it. So,
and I don't. And of course, through the credits, it changed from Andor music to complete John Williams. Like it went even through Michael Giacchino to then John Williams.
That was cool.
Yeah.
Like, hey man, we're Star Wars. We we're a part of this. We're all part of the whole family. Well, there it is, guys. What happened? What happened in the footy mold? Did your team win?
They're still going.
Oh, is it still going? Okay. I know you were berating me about my football team the other day. It's probably not
9 points with 12 minutes to go.
Oh, goodness me. Well, thanks for coming on this journey, guys. And hopefully we'll come back in a week or two. We'll take a little break and we'll break this thing down a little bit more. We've got some chances to. But I think it's been tricky. I know it hasn't been the easiest way to do this, having to do these 3 episodes at once and get them in and watch them quickly and then even have to wait a day and think about it and stew on it and do all this stuff. But Catherine, I know you'll be bringing Geek Pod back to do this, and I think I said that I think you should just do an episode, give the episode the treatment that they deserve. I know it's a longer bow, but that's up to you. It's your podcast. But I think if anybody's poised to do that, I think you're the one to. I don't think many people will do that, and I can't think of anybody more qualified.
I think the episodes all deserve, their individual deep dives, to really examine them, especially like Arc 3 or 2 BBY. You know, we've got to come up with names.
Well, I want an episode just for Mon's speech.
Yeah.
Well, that is an episode.
You could do Andor Minute, Catherine.
Oh,
Yes.
a lot of minutes.
That's a lot of minutes.
That's a lot of minutes.
You're already coming like, what do I do
wavering.
next? It's like, why does it have to be over? Like, it doesn't have to be over at all. We're one more minute into.
Just
We're
stretch it
one more
out.
minute into Andor. That's how you could do it.
We
You could call it.
podcasted
We're one more
minute
minute
about
into
Andor.
Andor, and you could do the Andor Minute. Oh, I'm just giving you a great. Stay tuned, everybody.
Yeah.
Get comfortable for the next
I
5
better-
years.
I better talk to the Star Wars Minute guys.
I do not do that. It will take over your life.
That's our thing.
I think it's more going to commitment. Thank you so much, guys. Anything anybody want to plug? Turbo, anything you want to plug, mate? See you on the Scruffies. You were on the
nothing to plug.
Scruffies recently. Check Turbo out
I
on
was
the
on the
Scruffies. looking
Scruffies
at the
recently.
podcasters.
That was
Talking about cakes or something.
talking about
there's
cakes.
another
Yeah, cake spotting. I'll be in the US next week at a
yes.
certain
Photos, please.
friend's wedding. Photos, please.
Are you working from home tomorrow, Turbo?
Yes.
All right, I might buzz you later.
Yeah.
There's some merch.
Well, let's catch up next week.
I'll come over for tea.
He just invites himself over to you. Make sure you cook.
I don't have any
nice.
cakes handy.
All right, just give me my.
We have to do the beanie exchange and the.
I know they've started to go out to some of our other friends who couldn't make it. I know Rick Villanueva's got his, and Hawes has got his as well, and a few other people. So it's nice that people go there and they like them. So, Mole, anything you want to plug, mate?
Nothing to plug. We're all good here.
Nothing.
Although I may bring the 3 Men and a Baby Yoda out of retirement. Turbo, be ready for some Andor recap once they finish watching it. It's been that good.
Excellent. Catherine, I know we sort of did round up on you before, but anything else? Making plans in the background. Where do we go from here? It'll all be in the future.
Yeah, I really don't know. Give me some time. I've got to have a few watches. Maybe during school holidays, I might just try to book out some days and just season 1, season 2, Rogue One, New Hope.
What a holiday.
Yeah.
It's stuff Empire.
They're like, but Empire's next. Maybe I should roll into that. Maybe.
I'll just go watch Rogue One again.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody who's listened to this. We've got some really great feedback from people who really enjoyed this. We've loved doing it. We obviously missed our great friend Andy, who would have loved this as well. We haven't forgotten about you, mate.
I was talking about this.
We'll still give you the time and everything that you deserve when we get through this, but mate, we haven't forgotten you. We know you'd love it, and we'll see you all soon. Bye for now, everybody.
Sagrona Tima.
Sagrona Tima.
Perrin, you dirty dog.
Oh, and Perrin, you dirty dog. Oh my god.
Skull wife in the back of the car. Oh.